So we're going to start first with Joe Zaccardi. Joe needs very little introduction. He's been out and about a lot in the last year. He has, is it 3 books, Joe, before the anthology? So he has 3 wonderful books of poetry. The last one is just a gorgeous book, 9 Gradations of Light, which I hope he has more copies of. And then for his Poet Laureate project, he did an anthology against bullying called Changing Harm to Harmony. And just unbelievable things with this anthology. Tons of readings. He heard from people all over the country. He got an email from Mark Doty. It's just been an explosion of outpouring of love and support. Really great things. So that's all I'm going to say because we want to hear from Joe. So let's hear it for Joe. Let's raise a toast. This is a toast to Joe Zaccardi for a great job. Hear, hear! Woo!
So is this, no, he can't hear me, right? How about that?
Let me help.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Hold on.
Oh, it's too,
There we go.
little thumbs.
No, not too high. It'll block the view.
Yeah,
It'll pick him up. It's set. It's set. Good.
great. How's that? Y'all hear me? Levi returns to Jade Mountain. I saw a tiger dozing in a hammock, swagged between 2 ginkgos. I saw a recluse sleeping on a lichen and moss-covered stone bed. I heard about a flock of geese that mistook rocks for an estuary as dusk flared and faltered and distant peaks flamed. I dreamed about a seabird over the ocean searching for food and land. I chanted a poem about a lost sailor and the glint on his battened sail. I heard bells sound over a barren field and saw frost thicken on a horse's mane before melting into a 5-petal flower. I walked on planed planks of a footbridge over a shoal of carp while cicadas chirped in overhanging wild plums and willows. I read stories about the ancient capital in the state of Chin, where a rock was said to have advised its king. I heard of a golden pheasant, so enamored with his image in a bronze mirror that he danced on and on until he died. While I stopped to pick up fallen horse chestnuts along the wayside, I saw a widow uproot brambles and weeds to plant yellow seeds of yarrow. I thought I would do something a little different and start with a poem. First off, I'd like to thank you all. Thanks for being here. It's a wonderful gathering. But I want to congratulate Prartho Sereno, who's our 4th Poet Laureate. And she's not only a remarkable poet, as you will hear later tonight, I'm sure, but she's a remarkable teacher. I took a couple of her workshops probably about 8 years ago, and it's still with me, all those things, about memorizing the poem that I didn't memorize tonight. She would, each time we met, we had to memorize a poem. And so I, of course, only picked like 15-word poems, But it is a wonderful thing. I love the way she talked about that, how, you can learn it here, and that's one thing, but if you learn it here, you really know it, And the other thing is, and I know this also, is that she is a remarkable teacher to children, and that is going to be part of her project, and she will speak to that. She told me stories about children that she was teaching. She really listens to children and loves what she's doing. And she would talk to this one. I remember she told a story about one young child who she asked a question, and she saw his eyeballs roll up, thinking I could see him going through all the possible answers and realizing that all of them were good and none was good enough. And so he just said, I don't know. But that was enough, and that was her heart. And I also want to say, this is a remarkable book. I haven't read it yet, but I've heard her read. Well, let me finish. I've heard Prartho read a few poems, and I went to her website yesterday, and it's a wonderful website. You just type in Prartho, and it'll pop up. And when you get there, all of a sudden, you have her reading her poems. It's just a really, really wonderful thing. I'd hope you would go there. Now let me talk about my project, which was Changing Harm to Harmony. And when we started this, the first panel discussion I had, I said, let me go back a little further. As I started talking to people, and to school administrators and to people at Spectrum who deal with bullying, and they said, oh, we're going to do big things. And I said, no, I'm not going to do big things. I'm going to do a teaspoon worth. And I'm going to ask 100 people to do that, and for them to ask 1,000 people to do that, and for them to ask 1,000,000 people to do that. And if we all just do a teaspoon, if we become overwhelmed, we tend to fail, because there is no one answer and there is no one question. And that has really worked. These little bits and pieces that came in, and I've known, I've received letters and emails and phone calls from people all over the country, who are not in the book or who are in the book. And they were just blown away by, wow, this is really good. And some of them would go, gee, I was a bully and I didn't even know it. I didn't know the things that I did, calling a girl Scarface or calling a boy Pimplehead or something, that would hurt them, and worse, there are worse things. And they said, several have said, I've contacted that person. And I thought they'd forget about it completely. He said, they didn't. They said, no, I think about it every day of my life, that harm. And, so they apologized. And sometimes their apology was enough, and they would agree to meet up and become friends, And sometimes the person who was hurt would just say, I don't even want to talk to you. It's just the way it is, Then I heard from a lot of bystanders. And that's almost everybody. Even somebody who causes harm can be a bystander, and even somebody who's been harmed can be a bystander. It's very hard to step out of the crowd, especially if you've been one that's been bullied, and try to defend someone else. So we're all sort of guilty of that. But as a bystander, if we all do just that little bit, we can make a difference. And as I said, from all the letters I've received, and from all the people around here, people have come up to me after various readings in tears, just about what's in this book. But not only that, it just brought stuff up that they remembered. So really, I thank you all. And I was, it's kind of like the Academy Awards. I can't thank you all because, just literally, I was looking at it. I have talked to or received emails or letters to over 1,000 people. Wow. So I want to thank you all for all you were here. I know most of you, and all those other people all across the country. Just wonderful. Okay, and I'm going to close with one more poem, and then we'll have Prartho. I don't know if you noticed the first poem was really about reflection, and so was this one. And these. This is titled, Shanyon Shi writes about his life while watching wild rice undulate. In my first year, I thought of nothing. In my 7th year, my thoughts were of dragons and wars. In my 9th year, I scrawled characters on sand and rock, leaving them behind to wash away and grind down. In the spring of another year, I wore out the hours pining for beauty and greatness and blessedness. In the summer of my middle years, I chased animals in the clouds, let my horse gallop riderless and unbridled. In the fall, turning older, I grew remorseful and morose, and drank heavily and abandoned all common sense. In the winter of my 60th year, my hair turned white, and I walked between graveyard poplars and stone drums. I whistled my falcons back to my outstretched arm. I looked upon the vast seas and great distances, and thought about the backwaters surge and sink, about how a fisherman lost upon the great oceans thinks only of land and land's end. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, before we move on to the next part of the program, I wanted to acknowledge Barbara Brooks, our outgoing recording secretary, for the great job. How many years has it been? Barbara, how many years? 6 years. Too many years. 6 great years. Thanks, Barbara. And of course, we're not going to let her go from being the door person, because we love seeing her smiling face every month. So just in case you're here only for the party, don't forget, we have a wonderful reading coming up at 7:30. So after we're done with our celebration, we can eat more cake, mingle some more, and then our regularly scheduled reading starts at 7 o'clock, our regularly scheduled reading. Thank you. Okay, so now I'm thrilled to introduce to you our new Poet Laureate, Prartho Sereno, who I met, I guess it was about 8 years ago when I first came to poetry, and I was told that she was pretty much the go-to person. And she's been around a lot longer than that. We all know her. We've all heard her read. We love her poems. She has, before this year, had 2 wonderful books that I have, and now has a brand new book called Elephant Raga that I just bought. She went back to Syracuse, New York, cold, freezing, dark, horribly climated Syracuse, New York for, was it 3 long years? 3 long years to earn her MFA, which I really admired that kind of commitment. That was an amazing thing to do. And was an amazing poet before and still is, and we're really lucky to have her as Poet Laureate. So let's join me in raising a glass to our new Poet Laureate, Prartho Sereno. And
well, Becky, I heard you were the go-to person for poetry. So thank you, everybody, for being here and for helping this happen in all the ways that you have. One of the thoughts I had just now is that I've grown up with almost all of you as poet. I first came to the Marin Poetry Center, to this place, for the high school poetry contest. Oh, sorry. Do I need to do something? I think there's, okay. Okay, how am I doing? Better? No. This one. See, there's 2 of them, so I have to be, yeah, okay. All right, good. So I first came to this Falkirk Center. I saw it in the Pacific Sun. It said that the high school poetry contest awards were going to happen, and I came and sat way in the back somewhere, and looked and said, these are my people. And I jumped in very quickly, actually, and became, worked with Albert De Silver, actually our first Poet Laureate who's here, and we ran the poetry program for a couple years together, and I stayed on. So really, I can tell stories like that about almost everyone here, different projects we've been on, different ways that we've grown up. I had no poetry books at that time, not even a chapbook. It was about 15 years ago. So, and here we are together, still growing. So thank you to everybody, to Rick, to everybody. So maybe I'll talk a little first and then read. I think that's probably the better way to go. So there's been some curiosity about the project. As the Poet Laureate, I feel my main job, this is how I hear Poet Laureateship, and it's how I hope to do it, is to bring people who are not already in the choir to poetry. So to really try to show how alive and with possibility in poetry is. So my hope is to get people to dance poetry, get people to, and I mean real dance troupes, to take poetry that maybe children have written, take poetry that some of you have written, and get it to the streets. That's the idea. So have dance, have music, have... one of my ideas, which is starting to percolate pretty well now, is to have a magician illustrate some children's poetry, which I think they would just love. So things appearing, disappearing, and that kind of thing. And another thing is, I've actually already tried this a little bit, is an ikebana master, which is someone who arranges flowers, is usually the thought. But in this case, he just arranges whatever he can find. So it's like rusty wheels, beautiful things, wabi-sabi things. And he puts them together in response to poems. And he did that at my book launch for my poems and some of the children's poems also that were there. So my hope is to just have parties, quite honestly. And to show how poetry really is belongs there in the party, in the world. So, and every time I give this kind of talk, which I've been giving quite a few readings with my book coming out and everything, I do invite people, and people have been coming up to me, and it's just so wonderful. So I'm inviting you all, if you get an idea, please let me know. If you have an idea of how to dramatize or illustrate or play with poetry in a way that will bring a few people from the fringes. I think most people want to like poetry. They're just not sure how to get in. So we're going to help them do that, I hope. There you go. I like it. Actually, it's possible. It's good. Good. Oh, and I'm going to make one announcement, too. I have the poetry writing workshop that I do at the College of Marin. I have what we call boot camp, affectionately. And it's this June from, let's see, I'm going to look at the dates, June 15th to the 18th. And it's 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. every day for 4 days straight. So it's 3 hours a day. It's very inexpensive. It's at the College of Marin. It's if you're a member, it's $67. So anyway, I'm inviting any of you to come. It's really a very intensive couple of days together. So a week, really. 4 days, exactly. Let's be clear about this. Okay, so I think I'm going to start with this one. When I looked, I've been giving several readings, and I do know some by heart. I'll definitely do a few of those. But I also think this is a group I can read my poems to. This is the poets. So this one I picked partly because it's so strange, and it says something. It's almost to me an ars poetica, really. And it's called an ars poetica, being about poetry. It's called The Mother of 10,000 Things, which you might recognize from the Tao, the 10,000 things, which really pretty much means everything. The mother of 10,000 things. My mother meant to yarn her way through, a regular comedian. But whenever she leaned toward the mic, it bloomed. When she opened her mouth, honeybees. Handkerchiefs turned to armadillos in her pockets. And wherever she sat, the chair would rise, sail her out the door. Instead of laughter, my mother spread hush. Instead of shadow, she cast awe. Bereft of gravity's happy end, she resolved to redirect the flow. Set up coils on both sides of the bed, a lightning rod out in the yard. It works, she told me. She didn't fly so far and away anymore. Her feet landed more squarely in her slippers. She tried to show me and shuffled over to the beveled window, but her grip on the monotonous gave way. The prism edge broke her into a shoal of minnows. that flashed through the house all day. You don't have, it's probably better not to clap, actually. Let's see. Sorry, it's farther down. Okay, let's try this one. This is called Astronomy at the Alzheimer's Clinic. And it is actually, it's all right if you laugh, it's fine. It's actually when I worked in the Alzheimer's Clinic as a writing teacher. And at that point, most of my poets weren't able to make letters anymore, and so I had to write the lines on the board. But we made poems, and we had fun. And one thing I will say is that in the Alzheimer's Clinic, everyone loves poetry. When you finish reading a poem, they're just like, wow, that said it, didn't it? And they hear it. They're hearing it, and I still do wonder exactly what it is, and this poem has some of that wondering in it. So it's called Astronomy at the Alzheimer's Clinic. We are talking about stars. Mildred just told us she couldn't remember a time when she'd seen them. And I think maybe the fog that lumbers through this valley really did swallow the firmament every night. But suddenly, a time rushes back when indeed the skies opened, and there, like a thief's lining of watches, they were. I saw stars, she cries, a tiny galaxy spinning at the corner of one eye. This stops B, who's been pacing the outskirts of the circle. She can see her family lying flat on the asphalt. It's the 50s. You couldn't begin to count them all, the way kids kept popping out of us. And there they are, crunched together in a hush on the blacktop, drinking the milky spill over Ohio's cicada-filled cornrows. And now we turn to John, digging his way through a dream. He waits to be sure we won't give up on him before he makes the climb, lifts his head, says, yes, yes, I saw stars right there in Petaluma. They were so bright, you couldn't do anything about them. There's a little more. It is a good ending, but there's a little more. He's given us our last line. I step aside from the whiteboard to read the poem, and as an epilogue, Szymborska's, with a line that stops me as I read. We've inherited hope, the gift of forgetting. And I wonder what fills my new friends as they nod their heads, their starlit faces round-eyed and rapt. So I think I'll do some by memory because I don't like looking at the book. So this one, I'll just do two, I think. This one is the opener, and the next one is almost the closer in the book. So the opener in the book is why it's called Elephant Raga. You'll find an elephant featured, a few elephants featured in this poem. But it's about my traveling back and forth to Syracuse, and because I came home all the time, first, luckily for Christmases and summer and things like that. So I would be in the airport a lot. And so what that meant is I'd see these people at the baggage claim with these beautiful signs, and they never had my name on them. So this poem is about that. It's called Deplaning. At the far end of baggage claim, in their pastel shirts and navy blue blazers, they look so longingly in my direction, jiggling those hopeful block-lettered signs. Hernandez, Patel, Moore. I want to go to one and say, yes, I am Mrs. Moore. Then turn and walk with him into a new life. Yes, I want to say, to everything. Hyatt Regency poolside. Yes, praise the Lord. Oh, thank you. These bags seem to put on pounds with each new time zone. Am I attending the conference? Why, yes, giving the keynote on my life's work with elephants. Yes, amazing what they have to say in tonal registers beneath the human ear. expressions of love for which we have no name. I never made out the actual words, but they taught me with a subterranean patience. I learned to sleep standing on the savannah, rocked in a long, slow chorus of grass-scented breath. Yes, I can see the traffic is terrible this way. I don't mind at all if you take the back road. And do tell me about your summer with the bears, especially the scrappy one with the torn-up ear. He led you upriver to watch the salmon spawn, and you ate with him. And that fish still flaps in the pit of you, that fish you shared with the gleaming, slobbering dark. And the last one I'll leave you with is, I think the whole reason I went to Syracuse is this poem. That poem was written there too, but this poem has something for me in it, and I hope it does for you. It actually was influenced, shall I say, provoked by academia. And I don't mean to offend any academics here, but when I got back to academia, I realized it was not my world. And part of the reason for that was it is a world that is really dependent on what is visible and measurable and weighable, and and everything else is a bit suspect. Things like joy in particular. And yes, good. I'm glad you're with me. You're with me. I knew it was my people. So this is called Magdalene, and it is the Magdalene you might assume it is. Faces the tribunal of quantifiable evidence and measurable outcomes. It is all in her voice. Yes, it is possible, I suppose, that he hypnotized us, and we only imagined ourselves in those silent depths. That he tricked our minds into peace, our bodies into ease, created the illusion that we were whole. And perhaps we only felt as if we were loved, with abandon. He smelled like rain, and his voice made my bones hum like 1,000 dulcimers. Yes, I suppose it was only an imaginary wind that brought us to our feet and then blew us back into lives that are now somehow on fire. And I suppose one could make the case that he faked the whole thing, that he was just like the rest of us, lost, tiny as a grain of rice in a bubbling kettle of stars. He may have only brought laughter to our days and dancing to our feet, only made it seem a blessing to be alive. No, sirs, I have nothing to show. None of us got rich or made ourselves a name. But often my pillow is wet when I wake in the night and think of him.